Welcome back, everybody, to the VIBE Edu Podcast with my friends and colleagues, Kim, Josh, and TJ. We just finished our 4th episode, and the first 4 of our conversations were around professional development, professional learning. And we're excited to take on a new topic today. In session 5, we are going to dive into teacher evaluations for most likely the next 4 episodes. So I'm going to pass the mic to TJ Vari and see, where are we going with this?
I think we should talk about some of the worst teacher observations that we've had and maybe some of the worst strategies, even maybe that we've used.
Would it be okay for the teachers on the call, Kim and I, to talk about either observations we've had or I don't really think of, and Kim, I know you do too, when you're in a classroom, it's not an observation, but you are observing somebody. So TJ, do we have permission to speak from those perspectives? Because you and Josh are, former
principals. But we were teachers once, Mitch. I mean, we can also speak on when we were teachers.
You two are kind of the evil empire in this conversation.
Is this a divide? Are we?
So,
hey,
Kim and I.
All right. I'm going to talk about some of the good things too with teacher evaluation.
That's not in this. We're starting with poor.
Okay, we'll start. I can start with poor.
I can too.
I told you this is part of this story, but my first observation, the feedback was I needed to put some stuff up on the walls.
Yeah. And
I really wanted feedback. I wanted some, I was teaching my butt off. And I really wanted some teacher feedback on strategies to engage kids or classroom management or something. It did go well. It was fine. I was a good teacher, but I wasn't about to put stuff up on the wall. I told you guys before that I have this problem with text where everything that's around me that's in print, I read, and that made me suffer in high school because every day I had to read everything again, and teachers had so much stuff on their walls, and I would sit back down the next day and I'd have to read every poster and everything that was on the wall, the entire alphabet or whatever that was up there, even from elementary school. Here I go. And so I just vowed that as a teacher, I was never going to put stuff up like that. And that was the only piece of feedback I got. And I had a good rationale why I wasn't going to do it. But funny thing was, the next observation I had was the same feedback to get stuff up on the walls. So I did eventually put student work up that wasn't rich in text. And I learned some lessons around that. But yeah, I didn't feel like I was getting the type of feedback that I wanted in those 2 observations, at least, not as a new teacher anyway. And I always remember the savior drama for your llama posters and all that stuff from when I was a principal. And I also memorized what was on all of my teachers' walls when I would observe teachers, because I had to read it every time I got in there. Tell me there's a pill for that.
I love your brain.
One of the mistakes that happens with those stupid posters is that we mistake that for culture. And it's that's not culture. That's oh, you can, shoot for the stars or whatever all these sayings. And there's a bug or a bear hugging a rabbit. And you're that bear would eat the rabbit. That's a stupid poster with a saying and we put them up and it's oh, it feels good. It's that's not real culture. So that feedback's weak. Okay, I'm going to tell this one just because I even talk about it in my first book, but I was visiting a school and doing just walkthroughs, classroom observations, all not, there it is, non-evaluations. But I'm kid you not, I walk into this room probably 3 or 4 minutes before class is starting. And I think it was a traditional 50-minute class period, high school setting. And the first thing I noticed is I walk into the room and the desks are almost look haphazardly placed. I couldn't figure out the strategy around it. Sometimes you'll go in, you're oh, that's interesting. Somebody's getting creative or trying something new. And this was that. This was not that. I was kind of huh. And, kids started coming in, sitting down. And the next thing I notice is like half of the kids in the room, their desk, their assigned seat is facing the opposite direction of where the teacher was, right? And I'm not here to say everything has to be in rows, but at least you got to be able to see instruction and things going on, right? And the other thing I noticed just right away was, speaking of culture, the conversation, the level of conversation, like volume wise, was just very noticeable that like they know they have some time to hang out and chit chat. And this teacher is up front. He didn't look up once as kids were coming in. And I just thought, oh, he might be preparing. We've all had those days where you're like rushing and kids are coming in, bell rings, no change in the teacher, like affect, didn't look up, still getting ready, doing stuff up there, I'm assuming. Kids are coming in tardy, kids are talking. And I hung out in that classroom, and at 20 minutes into the class period, the teacher started engaging with kids. And I just thought, okay, bad day. We all have bad days, So I just decided I was at that school for 2 or 3 days, and I went back multiple times. And that's how this teacher started class. And it was the interesting thing is how the kids just knew. They came in, sat down, and it was not like, I don't even have to be ready. I have 20 minutes to just hang out, and we wonder about where classroom management issues breed. I've never seen anything quite that egregious, because I have this saying, I've speaking not more mathematic, TJ, than reading everything, but I kind of obsess over time, especially in a middle school, high school setting where you're in a self-contained environment. I feel like there's a different pace, all right? But the average school year is 180 days. And if I take 1 minute, if I waste 1 minute as the teacher getting started, I've just lost 3 hours of instruction time for teaching and learning. So if I take 3 minutes to get started, which is not uncommon, right? I'm putting in my attendance, I'm doing my things. That's 9 hours teaching and learning time. We're not even talking about the end of the period and transitions. So 20 minutes was quite egregious. I think that's probably the one that stands out for me.
Yeah, it's true. I was in a school one time and we were there doing visits because everybody said this place was awesome. And at the end of every period, this is high school, every single kid lined up and stood at the door. And you could see it in the windows. Like I was like, wow, like we're missing 5 minutes at the end of every period in every class. It was a culture. And I'm like, I'm not taking this is not a visit. I'm not going to bring this back to the people, like kids with their backpacks on, 30, all standing on the back of the classroom until the bell rings. That just bothers me from an industrial standpoint as well. But yeah, wasted instruction time, big no.
And also those moments of undefined time and experience in the classroom are not necessarily, talking about culture, don't necessarily feel safe for all kids.
100%.
For a lot of them, it's fine, but for a lot, that is not a safe space. So that's where bullying is happening in classrooms, and I don't mean that in terms of like an authoritarian, got it every second, scripted, but 5 minutes, 1 minute, like we can use this for something. So.
Okay, Josh, what about you?
Well, I'm going to speak on both since Mitch wants both perspectives. So there's not much to say as far as a teacher because it was just a lack of support or evaluation time at all. And I think I may mention this in previous episodes, but just the fact that they would come in for a very short period of time, they'd sit down, take a couple notes, and then they would be just like a thumbs up, great job, and walk out. Yeah. And then I wouldn't see him ever again. And at the end of the year, it was like, do you have any questions? Well, no, you gave me great scores, so I'm good. Thank you. Sign off. And that was it, right? And that was just repetitive year after year after year.
Can I ask you something, Josh, real quick?
Yeah, of course.
To TJ's point, and he's said this in the previous 4 episodes as well, but didn't you want critical feedback? Weren't you hungry for like, I want to get better? And even if I'm naturally pretty good, and some teachers are, like they walk into the space and it makes sense, but it doesn't mean there's no room for growth.
Oh my gosh,
Did you
no.
feel that?
So here's the problem is when I first started my very first year, I had a team teacher that was next door. So I was an art teacher. So there was two art teachers at that time. We had almost 1,500 students. He came in, I swear it was like my first week of school. And he was like, if you have an issue, come to me. Don't go to admin. You don't want to be known as the guy that needs help from admin. So student issues, curriculum, whatever it may be, come to me. So he was my guy. Like he gave me a lot of feedback and was phenomenal and is an administrator now today.
Cool.
So I felt like I did have support and a source for feedback, but he also freaked me out to go to admin for anything because it was like, don't be seen, don't be heard unless you're asked to be seen and asked to be heard. And so that mindset is probably pretty toxic, but at the same point, I took it as like something that was incredibly important for that culture of that school because it was brand new, not only to teaching, but to the campus, to the state. So I was just like, okay, that's just how it is. And so, yeah, when they didn't provide feedback, I was just like, I guess I'm out of their hair and they have a good perception of me. And so, if I need to get feedback from someone else, then I just pull either someone from the district or pull from my, team teacher here across the hall and bring him in for something. So that was my source. That's probably not the right way to think about it or looking at it now, reflecting on it, but that's just how it was. And so I just assumed like, okay, I guess if I'm an issue, then they'll be in here for 45 minutes or be in here multiple times during the year. But I guess they're not worried about how I'm doing in a classroom. And so I'll take that as a good job and move on. So I didn't really have any like horror stories. It was just an absence of that system, and for me, it was just like, well, maybe it's just a check the box and move on. And it doesn't really have much value in it. That's kind of my perception as a teacher. And then moving as far as an admin, obviously it's different. Going into the classroom and seeing a lot of different things. I think, Mitch, to your point of like waste of time, I think the one that stands out to me the most is I had a teacher. She came in, took attendance, sat down and was like, Billy, it's your turn. And, that kid goes up to the front, recited a poem, sat down. The teacher called the next child. They recited the exact same poem, sat down. Third child, same thing, over and over and over. She got through maybe half the class and then was like, okay, we'll pick up tomorrow. Bell rings, kids leave.
Was this a public speaking course?
Nope. It was English, middle school English. And I was just like, what just happened? So I was like, okay, just, when you get a chance, just come to my office. Well, I'll provide some feedback in regards to it. And I was like, yeah, when she was in my office, I was like, you don't want that as your evaluation. And she looked confused, like, why not? And I was like, let's go over the rubric real quick. And so I just started like reading off the different items and objectives and things that I had to, and I was like, okay, so share with me the evidence based on, objective 1 here. And then it was like silence. Okay, let's go to the next one, and so I'm going through that and I was like, I don't have any evidence to say that you did any of this. So I can't use this. So let's look at the goals and objectives just of your lesson. What were you hoping to occur during that lesson? How is that now met with like the state and what they want, right? So what was mastered here? So there was a lot of conversation in that and just letting her know, like, we're not here for memorization. Like, how's that also on the other side of it, of how are we preparing this student for the world? Because there's no creative thinking and there's nothing that's really made at all in this in this lesson. Is literally just reciting a poem. It was kind of mind-blowing, and still talking through it today is kind of, I still don't understand the thinking through it.
I like my odds. I like my odds. I like Mitch's odds for that strategy because
executive functioning.
Well, no, inevitably, like they're going to be alphabetized. They're going to go from the attendance list. And so as a V, like I also say this on an education podcast, I always had to sit in the back of the class because the attendance was dumb.
Your locker was really far away.
My locker was far away. I got the last pencil in the bin, all the stuff, And so I would be, even if my mom said, how are you going to memorize the poems? I'm going to listen to it 29 times.
Yeah, I don't have to prepare.
30th time, I'm going to kill it. I don't even know what the poem is.
Hey, I got you. I'm Weathers, so
Yeah.
W.
Oh my God, you guys. Well, I think
gracious of you. Sorry to interrupt you, Kim, but I just got to say, from a teacher standpoint, for you to have that conversation and say, "We got to redo.
Yeah,
you can do better. Let's let."
Oh, I could have slammed that.
A lot of admin would have been like, "This is everything I need to, do what I have to do." So sorry, Kim.
No, I was just thinking, like, I definitely work with teachers, and I've been in classrooms where they're snapping at children saying, don't do that, stop that, grabbing arms. Like, I've definitely seen all of that. Yeah. But I now work with amazing educators who not only have like the mindset, like they would never, like naturally they would never snap at kids, right? But they also take their teacher evaluations so seriously that they will ask me to coach them before their teacher evaluation, because it's so important to them, because they're searching for that validation that they're doing a good job, right? And so one of my teachers this past year, even when we sat down, we looked at her doc log. So for her state, they have a doc log, and every single year they have like all of their objectives, right? And we talk about all of the systems and all the things that she is going to do in her classroom. It's going to cover all those things. And then before she meets with the principal to talk about what her lesson is going to be, we talk about, listen, this is what they're looking for. And you're going to be able to speak to all of these things because you're already doing all of them in your classroom, and you're doing them exceptionally. You are an exceptional educator at your core already, but you have these systems in place in this language that's going to support everybody, and you're doing all of these things. Fast forward, she makes the date happens for the observation. And of course, there has to be a cancellation, of course. So she'd already planned like the perfect lesson. She'd already planned all the things she's going to do. She's going to add in like technology, blah, 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 all the things, right? And she's like, Kim, it had to be canceled. So I'm just going to do, it's whatever. Like, I'm just going to be me. I can only be me. They can come in whenever. My door is always open. Just come in, and it is what it is. The principal comes in another day and sits down. And of course, she's phenomenal. I've been in her classroom for years, you guys. For years, I've been in her classroom. I've been there for hours, days, right? It's not like it's just like a lesson that you plan for a 30-minute evaluation. She's phenomenal. And principal walks out. They debrief afterwards. And she got marked effective. Just effective. Not exceptional, but effective. And for a teacher that works with me, who, takes those evaluations to heart, she's like literally almost in tears, because she is not just effective, she is exceptional. And there is not a single other teacher across that campus that is doing what she is doing to support the executive functioning skills of kids, to support the social and emotional skills of kids, to support their academics. I mean, this woman is phenomenal. And I had to tell her, I was like, your principal never used any of those systems or any of that language in their classroom when they were a teacher. They don't know. So when they come into your classroom and you are explaining these things, it's foreign to them. They don't understand it. So it's like that part is really, really tough. I know, especially for the good ones, the others, we talk about that a lot. And teacher evaluation, especially for people that take it to heart and are thinking, I'm busting my ass. I'm spending money. I'm paying money out of my pocket to be coached. And I know that I'm doing things better than a hell of a lot of teachers across the nation are, right? A lot of people are just snapping at the children, and she's not, and she's actually supporting them. And then to get something like that, I mean, It's hard. That's hard. So that story, I think, because it just happened the end of this school year, and I was like trying to talk her off the cliff for months. Like, no. Remember that all of your people, like, we're all in this together. We're all doing the same thing. Like, you really, truly have got this. But that's hard. I think that's hard when you have an administrator who doesn't get it and doesn't see it and doesn't support you. That's really tough.
There's a lot to unpack with that, Kim. Yeah. But I think one thing to say, and I'll probably say stuff like this again when we do our 4-part series on the system, what I call the educational industrial complex. But even like the spending of your own money, like when I was a principal, I said to my teachers in the beginning of every year, like, I don't want you to spend a dime of your own money until you run it by me first. Now, if it's something crazy, your drama for your llama poster, I'm not paying for that. But if it's
can Mitch have that? Because he has nothing on his wall right now.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I like Mitch's wall. Mitch is my favorite wall. Is that Mitch's wall right there with nothing?
I get TJ's undivided attention 100%. When we're talking.
100%.
Nothing for him to read.
Just the fact that the federal government's willing to give teachers a tax break because they know how much money teachers have to spend to set up their classroom, that just says that's a systemic problem that says something about the profession. And teachers should be able to have the resources that they and their students need without having to go to Walmart. That's a mess.
Yeah, Kim, I want to speak to, I know like for us, in Texas was T-Test was the teacher rubric that we use in an evaluation system. And they actually changed the verbiage and really changed it to the point where teachers would cry after they got their eval back because the terminology was very similar, if not the same, but it meant something completely different. And so I actually had to use pictures. And so I had like Olympic athletes as far as like what was developing, what was proficient, what was accomplished, and then distinguished. And distinguished, I had Jesus Christ himself in that picture because it was like, nobody's getting this. Like, you have to be above and beyond more than I've ever seen any educator anywhere in the world. It's pretty much not going to happen for anyone, right? And so I use that, one, to get a laugh out of them, but two, to let them understand like this realm here isn't happening. So don't get your heart set on it. And if you don't get it, get angry at me for not, because of the evidence that's required to meet that tier. And so even proficient, I was like, if you're landing on proficient in the past, if you landed on that, they thought they were going to get like fired the next year because that's not where you should land. But proficient in the new system, in the new rubric, that means you're a damn good teacher. And you need to understand that. And to have that shift in such a quick time was really difficult. And years passed after they changed even the language. It was so ingrained in their mind as to like what that word meant for them and their identity, that even when they got it and you tried to tell them how great they were and why they should be happy with the score, it still didn't resonate with them. And that was probably the hardest thing as far as being an admin with that change in the rubric system.
Yep. I think especially for this individual teacher, it is really tough when your colleagues just across the hall are getting the 4s, the highest, or the exceptional, or whatever it is, right? When like you've been in their classroom and you know what it looks like and you know what it sounds like. Like the desks might not be super crazy, Mitch, like as you were explaining, but for sure there's chaos in that classroom I've seen, right? And the one across the hallway. And I'm going, there's no learning happening. I know what they're doing in there. They're glued to their computers, tapping and playing like, I don't know, some multiplication fact car game to like get to the end for hours upon hours. That's not what you're doing. You are really doing exceptional work in here. And so I think when you know that you have a colleague who's getting the whatever it is, maybe it's because they've bullied their administrator. Maybe they've threatened, they have like that sort of, I don't know, personality where it's like, I'm not okay with this until I get my way. And the principal's like, I know that you are this way, so I'm just going to give it to you so you get off my back, right? Like that stuff happens, you guys. It's so crazy.
Well, part of the problem is not just what the administrator's doing. It's just the system that they have to use. Like I like Josh's explanation of that rubric because I think the only humane thing to do in this case is to explain precisely why that she didn't get the exceptional. Like we owe it to the teacher to say, this is why you're effective, and this is what you need to do to be whatever the top rating is. But I actually I just don't like the rating systems. I said, as a former admin, assistant, super, principal, I was going to talk, on this 4-part series on some of the things that I like about teacher evaluation systems and how to reframe the thinking to make it more effective. But I'll say the rating system, I just don't like. Like, I don't know how you can make that into something. If it was based on merit, like you're going to get a bonus, or it was something was going to happen good for you if you got to that top level, or it was tied to something else. But all it is a rating on you as a teacher. It doesn't translate to anything except for horrible emotions and reactions. So I don't know that I like it. I don't know that I have a fix. I think qualitative feedback is the best, quite frankly, not that quantitative measure. Here's what you did, and here's why it was good, and here's, how you can make it better. Like, I'd much rather see an explanation in writing than a checkbox and a rubric. That's just my take on feedback. But I also want to talk about informal feedback too, because I think that's a way better time to get support for teachers and to help celebrate them and to help get them better than the teacher evaluation system. Although I do think it's important.
I was just thinking about what you said, like celebrating the growth. I mean, that's what I teach teachers to do with their students. Celebrate the growth. You were, TJ, you just said it. You were here. This is what I just saw you do. And look at the amount of growth that has just happened because of that. Why can't we have that conversation with teachers also, right? Like the last time I was in your classroom, I saw this and now I see this. Wow, that's awesome. What do you plan on doing in the future to blah, 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 whatever that is? Or how can I support you in getting you to here? I think that would be way better. That'd feel different for sure.
Yeah, but I feel like we got that more with the goals system than we did with the evaluation system. The evaluation system as a one size fits all, and it's like everyone has to fit in these boxes. Really, it really limited what teachers could do, and what I felt like with the goal system was they were able to have that free reign to be able to say, what are my deficiencies? What do I want to work on? What do I want to grow? And then also having the data and evidence to support that, to show the growth. And the other thing I liked about the goal system is, like, once they did something out of their comfort zone or something they tried and it worked, then it was just a staple in their classroom that they just got to build upon each year. And I felt like I saw so much more about that teacher based on that system than I did with just this like checkbox where I have to go in and say, did I see this? And what was the evidence of that? And, to then label them at the end of where they fall based on what the state has deemed what a good teacher is versus what I'm literally witnessing right now.
But all that's, even with a rubric, is like all grading is so subjective.
Yeah.
That it's unfair, So having those, like you're saying, informal, TJ, just conversations, and have it be about a mindset of growth, of getting better. That's back to the culture thing, But I want to highlight something, Kim. It's so interesting. You all probably have this when you are at a social gathering not at work, not talking with other like-minded educators like we're doing right now. So many people have had the experience of just disinterested teachers. Like, they're just like, they tell stories of their experience and they just can't, they're like, you're a teacher? You working what? Really? And then they'll hear me talk passionately about it. And they're looking at me like I'm from Mars. Like, I never had a teacher like that. And I'm like, yeah, many of them are. And they're like, what? I just think teachers of like burnout, disgruntled, underpaid, overworked, don't really like the kids. Why would you take this job kind of paradigm? But the people you're talking about, and we all know many teachers, I venture to say more that way than not, but your teachers you're supporting, Kim, are amazing. That's incredible. Lucky kids to be in those classrooms.
Beyond. I think it's my goal, especially with my book, Becoming the Bison, coming out soon. We're crossing our fingers soon. My plan is to go to every single one of their states and be with them in their classroom this year and go on a full-on book tour. And I just know, like, I either teachers will pay out of pocket big money and I'll get to go into their classrooms and spend time with them. Or their district will spend big money and our team will fly out and be in their classrooms. But that's rare. That's really, really rare. And so again, it's my goal just to get in their classrooms because these are some of the most incredible humans. And again, brand spanking new teachers, like brand new year one teachers, all the way to, we have one that's retiring next school year. And by the way, she still is being coached, even her last year of teaching, and she doesn't want it to end. Like, she doesn't want it to end. And she's thinking, oh my God, I need my community, because this community is so much different than support from an administrator or, somebody coming in to do an evaluation. It's just so different.
I think two things to Mitch's earlier point, and I'm going to use, your community as an example, Kim. I actually think the perception, even of like a disgruntled teacher, might not really be a disgruntled teacher. Mm-hmm. Like the perception comes from, I always say, the cul-de-sac. Like, we're going to have a day with 180 kids today, or if you're a principal, you're going to have a day with 1,600 kids, let's just say. And you're going to pull into your driveway and you're going to get out and your neighbor's going to be there and they're going to say, how was your day? Or something sparks a conversation. And we typically respond by explaining the lowest point. Like, oh man, I had this kid threw a chair. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, yeah, but 179 kids didn't throw a chair. You saw 180 kids today. 179 of them didn't throw a chair. So then the person walks away and they're like, oh man, I'm going to tell my kids not to be teachers. That guy's disgruntled about his teaching experience. So even the good teachers, if they don't watch what they say, they get the perception that there's something wrong with the school or something wrong with them. And I don't think that's always the case. I think it's just because of our knee-jerk reaction is to say our lowest point for some reason, right?
That's a human
lizard brain.
I think that's a human nature thing, TJ, or at least a teacher thing. I caught this in my own practice, and now I've coached so many teachers on this. It's literally like a meditation. But I remember when I was new teaching, and it was a challenging environment, challenging school to say the least, inside class and outside the class. It was like on all the time. And I would go on long runs at the end of the school day and just kind of was my meditative think through process, right? Shake off, more importantly, try to find the positive energy to get at it again tomorrow. Not feeling very successful. But there's one thing I identified in my practice was if I had something go with a class, a kid or a couple kids, management issues, something like that, it would just fester. I would just obsess about those kids and that interaction or whatever it was. And at one point it dawned on me, like, there's 34 other kids in the room that are engaged, want to learn, things are going well. And I don't know what it is, but shifting your attention, not to ignore, off-task behavior or management issues, but to meditate or kind of stay focused on the majority. It's always the case. And this is a horrible way to explain it, but I would talk to new teachers, and there's a parable, the parable of the wheat and the weeds. You guys know that one? Where it's out of the Bible, and this guy's got all this wheat planted in his field, and his enemies come and spread a bunch of seeds for weeds in the field, and that starts to grow up with the wheat in the same field. And his assistants and workers that are working the field come to him and say, hey, this is what happened. Should we go pull up all the weeds real quick? Get them out of the field. And he says, no, you got to let them grow together, because if you pull the weeds, you're going to pull the wheat as well. Bad analogy. But what I always said to myself is, in every field, you're going to have wheat and you're going to have weeds. Bad analogy, because I'm not saying some kids are weeds and some kids are wheat. But point being, for me, it just, I know, I said from the beginning, bad analogy, but it always helped me.
Mitch is the one grabbing the kid on the arm that Kim was referring to earlier.
And I'm not trying to remove anybody. It's just, this is the fact of every day in school. You're going to have some The field's going to have wheat and weeds every day. It's going to be different every day, but that's just what we do. And the other part of it is it's just one day of school. I don't want to say don't take yourself too seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. Come back tomorrow and let's do this again, kind of thing. So forgive the bad analogy.
I don't know that it's all that bad. I definitely was a weed, but I think the part of the analogy that works for me is that any given day you're a weed or you're weed.
Mm-hmm.
Like don't pull the weed.
That's the thing. I don't think it's children. I don't think the weed is children or the weeds are children. I think it's the production of that day.
Yeah.
That's the way you can look at it. Mm-hmm. And if you have that evaluation system that you had, Josh, with that, the thing I loved about that is the Lebowski quote, because the distinguished teacher is Jesus. I couldn't help myself. When you were talking about that, I was like, so if you don't know that movie, you have no idea what TJ and I are laughing about inside so hard. But
you know what I used to do this with students, and then I started doing this with teachers, was you draw a horizontal line and you would do time blocks. So whether it's like on the hour or periods or whatever it is, right? And then you would rate. So your vertical axis is a scale. So you can go 0 to 5, 0 to 10, whatever you want, right? And your 0 really could be neutral. It could be absolutely neutral. You could also go into the negative if you wanted to do it that way and go up and down. But you scale it out so that my morning, it was about a 2. There weren't like crazy behaviors. I was feeling okay. Like you as a teacher, you can do this, right? But then I kind of dipped down that next hour and I was like low, like I was thinking about something or something happened and I went into like the negatives, or maybe I went to a 1 or whatever it is. And you can scale it out and graph it all day long. And you can see, wow, it wasn't a terrible day. The whole day wasn't terrible, but there were some peaks and valleys in between, right? And you can kind of see. And then again, if you're a kid or, working through this with a kid, you can say like, okay, so what is it about lunchtime, or what is it about 6th period that makes this spike go, or whatever it is, And then same for you as an adult. What is it about that time of day? Well, it's because this kid comes into my classroom and I don't know, this kid drives me absolutely nuts, and I can just, I sense that I start to get a little dysregulated and I'm putting out fires, or it could be anything. Or maybe I'm hungry. Like I've asked teachers, like, are you hungry during that time? Like you probably haven't peed, you haven't eaten anything. Like, is it a you thing? I don't know. What can you do? So I think we're talking about teacher evaluations, but it's also you evaluating yourself. That's part of it.
Yeah, everybody eats. Like, so one strategy for everybody is just to eat often. I know I got all these things going on with the diets or whatever, but I just think fuel is necessary. So have a snack in between periods. Let me offer one. I know we're going to wrap up, and maybe Josh will wrap us up here in a minute. But one thing I would just like to offer is I always wanted a system, a teacher evaluation system. And I know we're going to do a show on like strategies to make it good, and I can't wait for that. But I always wanted to work in a system where, let's say I had to visit teachers at least 6 times. I typically was in the range of 24 to 32 visits per teacher per year when I was a principal. But if I had a system where I had to visit teachers 6 times a year and I gave qualitative feedback every time, celebrations, performance coaching, professional dialogue, that's what Joe and I train administrators on from a walkthrough perspective. But what if I could log those 6 times and it was more informal in the feel? And you didn't get the teacher evaluation rubric unless that was a next step. So it's sometimes we go like the next step is the first step is the rubric, and the next step is like a professional plan or something like that. I always wanted that to be the third step. Like the first step is I visit you 6 times and I give you qualitative feedback. The second step is if I feel like in like the third time that it's not going well and these would be low ratings, I'm going to introduce the rating system. So now you have the teacher going home and saying, I'm on the rating system. I'm actually on the evaluation system. That's okay. That just means that we're going to formally evaluate this with a rubric in this language. And then if you can't figure that out, then we'll do the performance improvement plan or whatever. I always wanted a system like that. Let's trust teachers and leaders to work together on growth strategies, log 6 or 7 of these visits a year with real conversations and real written qualitative feedback, and then quantitative if it's not going well. I don't know if that's a bad idea. I never saw a system that did it that way, but I like to keep this growth structure and this relationship informal unless I have to use something that's more of a tool versus using a tool with everybody.
Okay. Yeah.
Then
well, since we're
had the conversation, TJ, of maybe this is a systems conversation, but I've never experienced an administrator in my room that many times in a school year. And most administrators I know are under the gun to even get 3. And sometimes those all happen in the same month of like February or March, like just the tyranny of the urgent for a school leader's reality. I know this is, maybe we can talk about that the next time, where we get kind of metacognitive about the whole thing, that where a school leader has the capacity for that. And I know some of that might be the couple administrators I do know that rolled that way, for lack of better explanation, just kind of buck the system. Like we're known for, like, I just don't do everything that's being asked of me. I just don't do it because I prioritize this. And if there's time left over after I've done this, the stuff you're talking about, TJ, then I'll get to some of this. And I feel like, that doesn't seem to make sense to me either.
No, that's my jam though. That's what we do with the capacity of school leaders. So let's talk about it on the next show. I can't wait.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, since we're talking about feedback, we got our first 5-star rating on Spotify. So if you're listening, you're loving the show, I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to jump in either Apple, Spotify, YouTube. I guess you can like it, you can share it out, you can subscribe. But for those who are loving the show, want to provide that wonderful feedback, of course, we'll of course accept that. And for the one person that has already done that, thank you. Spotify also has this wonderful thing where you can actually put comments on each episode. And we also got another comment from a listener. So thank you for that. We love hearing from you. If you have any suggestions or you want any topics in the future from this amazing panel of educators, of leaders, we'd love to hear from you too. And I'm super excited about the topic for not professional development. We already did that. The evaluation process and where we're going to go with that. Obviously, today we talked about kind of the reflection of us being teachers, leaders, some of the horror stories from that, just to kick it off. But obviously, we went a lot of different directions, and we're looking forward to furthering this even more. So I guess with that, thank you all for being here and having this wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
If you're hungry, don't rate the show.
Yeah. But we are a 5. We're a 5, right, Josh? 5-star. Does that mean we're distinguished?
We are.
And does that therefore mean we're Jesus?
It doesn't mean that. If Josh is going to rate, he's going to come in the room, and I'm going to have water in there, and he's going to go, "What are you doing with the water?" And I'm going to say, "I'm turning that stuff into wine while you're here, bro."
Watch me walk on it as I go across the room.
So good. That's so good.